The conference hall stretched across 300 meters of polished crystal and metal. 12 different alien species sat in elevated seats that formed a perfect circle around the center stage. Above them, the stars of Proxima Centauri glowed through transparent walls that seemed to hold back the vacuum of space itself. Commander Taiyang Park stood in the center of that circle, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes upon him. Some of those eyes were familiar, with 2 pupils and normal lids. Others glowed with strange colors or sat on stalks that moved independently. He wore his dress uniform, dark blue with silver buttons that caught the light. Behind him stood Dr. Hana Kim, carrying a data tablet filled with humanity's achievements, and Yun-Ho Choi, whose job as diplomat had prepared him for many things, but perhaps not for this. The presentation had gone exactly as planned. Taiyang had shown Earth's medical advances, the cure for 17 different diseases that had once killed millions. Hana had explained their engineering projects, including the space elevator that connected Earth to its orbital platforms. Yun-Ho had spoken about the peaceful integration of Earth's many cultures into one unified government. They had prepared for 6 months, checking every fact and polishing every word, that it had not mattered. High Chancellor Dexner of the Vren hegemony had laughed first. His species looked almost reptilian, with scales that shifted between green and blue depending on his mood. Right now, they were a dark, amused purple. His laughter echoed through the chamber, a sound like rocks grinding together. "A space elevator," he said, his voice amplified by the chamber systems. "My species built such things 4,000 years ago. We abandoned them as primitive before your ancestors learned to make fire." Several other council members made sounds that the translation devices rendered as agreement or amusement. The Calthene representative, a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline shell, flickered in a pattern that Taiyang had learned meant condescension. "You're faster than light drives," said another council member. This one from a species called the Morthine. She had 4 arms and skin like polished stone. "They require a full day to charge between jumps. Our ships make 10 jumps in an hour." Hannah's grip tightened on her tablet. Taiyang could see her jaw clench, but she said nothing. Yun-Ho's diplomatic smile never wavered, though his eyes had gone cold. The presentation continued. Every achievement humanity offered was met with dismissal or outright mockery. Their weapons technology was called crude. Their power generation was called wasteful. Their diplomatic efforts were called naive. When Hannah showed recordings of Earth's music, art, and literature, one council member actually yawned. "Tell me," said Dexner, leaning forward in his seat, "what makes humanity believe it deserves a seat on this council? You have barely left your own solar system. You have no significant military power. Your technology is centuries behind even our most backward colonies. What possible value could you bring to this assembly?" Taiyang took a breath. He had prepared an answer for this question. "We bring a fresh perspective, a willingness to learn, and the determination that has allowed us to survive and thrive despite the challenges we have faced." "Determination," Dexner repeated as if tasting the word. "Every species has determination, Commander. What you call determination, we call the baseline requirement for survival. It is not special. It is not enough." The Calthene representative pulsed with bright light. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere at once. "The Galactic Council has reviewed humanity's application in detail. We have studied your history, your culture, your technology, and your potential. Our decision is unanimous." Taiyang felt his heart sink. He had known this was possible, perhaps even probable, but some part of him had hoped. "Earth's application for full council membership is denied." The words fell like stones into still water. Hana made a small sound that might have been a gasp. Yun-Ho's smile finally cracked. "However," the Calthene continued, We recognize that humanity has achieved a certain level of development. Therefore, we offer observer status. You may attend council meetings. You may speak when called upon. You may not vote on any matter. You may not propose legislation. You may not serve on committees or working groups. In essence, Exner said, his scales rippling with amusement, you may watch and learn. Perhaps in a few centuries, you will be ready to sit among actual civilized species. The Morthene representative added one more detail. To earn your place as observers, humanity will take responsibility for waste reclamation management in the outer colonies. The systems are simple enough that even your limited technology should suffice. It will give you valuable experience in galactic administration, waste management. After everything humanity had accomplished, everything they had achieved, the Galactic Council was offering them the job of taking out the garbage for colonies too, remote or too poor to handle it themselves. Tai Yang looked at his team. Hana's face had gone red with suppressed anger. Yunho was already opening his mouth, probably to deliver some cutting diplomatic response that would make things worse. The commander raised one hand, and both of them fell silent. He turned back to face the council. 12 species, hundreds of representatives, thousands of years of collective knowledge and power. They looked down at him from their elevated seats, secure in their superiority, certain that humanity would either rage or beg. "We understand," Tai Yang said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "Humanity accepts the Council's decision. We will fulfill the duties of observer status. We will manage the waste reclamation systems as requested. We thank the Council for their time and consideration." The chamber fell silent. Several council members exchanged glances, clearly surprised by the lack of protest. "That is all?" Exner asked. "No appeal? No argument?" "No, High Chancellor," Tai Yang replied. He met the alien's strange eyes without flinching. "Humanity will remember this day. We will remember every word spoken here, and we will act accordingly." There was something in his tone that made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats, though none of them could have said exactly what it was. It was not a threat. It was not anger. It was something else, something that would only become clear much later. "This session is concluded," the Calthene announced. "The human delegation may depart." Tai Yang bowed slightly. A gesture of respect that Earth's diplomats had determined was universal enough to be understood by most species. Then he turned and walked toward the exit, his team following behind him. Their footsteps echoed on the crystal floor dot as the doors closed behind them. Not one of the humans looked back. The journey to their ship was silent. The walk through the orbital station's corridors was silent. The flight back to Earth took 3 days, and for most of that time, the 3 humans barely spoke. Only once did Hannah break the quiet. "They treated us like children, like primitives, like we were nothing." "Yes," Tai Yang agreed. "We should have fought back. We should have argued. We should have shown them they were wrong." "No," Tai Yang said. He was looking out the view screen at the stars streaming past. "We should have stayed silent." And we did. Yunho finally spoke up. "What happens now?" Tai Yang was quiet for a long moment. When he answered, his voice carried a certainty that seemed to fill the entire cabin. "Now we go home. We tell Earth what happened. And then we stop caring what the Galactic Council thinks of us." The ship flew on through the dark, carrying its silent passengers back to a world that was about to change its relationship with the galaxy forever. 50 years had passed since the day humanity learned its place in the galactic order. On Earth, monuments had been built to commemorate other historic moments, but no statue marked the Council's rejection. No museum displayed recordings of that humiliation. The humans simply did not talk about it. Dr. Hannah Kim was 78 years old now. though advanced medical technology had kept her sharp and active. She stood in the main laboratory of the Advanced Research Initiative, watching as younger scientists ran tests on equipment that would have seemed like magic to her younger self. She had become the director of this facility 20 years ago, and in that time, she had overseen breakthroughs that most species would have taken centuries to achieve. Director Kim called a young researcher named Jin-Woo Lee. He was barely 30, brilliant in ways that made even Hannah feel outdated sometimes. The quantum entanglement network is stable. We are ready for the final integration test. Hannah nodded and moved to the observation window. Below, in a chamber that could have held a small building, machinery hummed with barely contained power. Screens displayed equations that rewrote themselves in real time as the system learned and adapted. This was humanity's newest achievement, a network of quantum computers that could communicate instantaneously across any distance. No lag time, no signal degradation. Perfect communication from one end of human space to the other. The Galactic Council had faster-than-light communications? Of course. But theirs required relay stations and still took minutes or hours, depending on distance. This would be instant. Run the test, Hannah said. Xingwu's fingers danced across his console. Light filled the chamber below. For 3 seconds, the entire facility seemed to hold its breath. Then the screens showed confirmation signals from every human colony, from Mars to the settlements around Alpha Centauri. Perfect synchronization, Jinwoo reported. His voice was steady, but his eyes shone with excitement. 0 latency. 0 errors. Director, it works. Good, Hannah said simply. Document everything and move to production planning. I want every human ship and colony connected to this network within 5 years. She walked away as the team celebrated, leaving them to their moment of joy. Hannah had learned not to celebrate too loudly. The galaxy did not need to know about every human advancement. In fact, it was better if they did not know at all. Across human space, similar scenes played out in 1,000 different facilities. Medical researchers developed nanotechnology that could repair tissue at the cellular level, extending human lifespans and eliminating most diseases. Engineers perfected terraforming techniques that could make a barren rock into a garden world in just 20 years instead of a century. Physicists unraveled the mysteries of dark matter and learned to manipulate it, opening doors to power generation that made fusion reactors look like candles, and in classified facilities that few humans even knew existed. Military researchers developed weapons and defenses that would have shocked the Galactic Council. Gravitational weapons that could tear apart ships from a distance. Shields that bent space itself to deflect energy. And most importantly, the silent drive. Jinwoo Lee had designed the silent drive. It was his masterwork, the achievement that would make him famous someday when humanity finally chose to reveal what it had accomplished. The drive allowed faster-than-light travel without the energy signature that made most FTL ships visible across a solar system. Human ships could now appear and disappear without anyone knowing they had been there. Why silent drive? Hannah had asked him when he first proposed the concept. Because we are learning to move through the galaxy the way we now move through it politically, Jinwoo had replied. Without being seen. Without being heard. Until we choose to be. The Galactic Council noticed humanity's absence, though they did not understand it. Ambassador Mingji Shin delivered Earth's only regular communications to the Council, and those were brief reports on the waste management systems humanity had been assigned. The reports were professional, detailed, and completely devoid of personality or politics. Do the humans never attend trade conferences anymore? One council member asked during a session. They fulfill their observer duties as required, replied another. Beyond that, they seem to have no interest in galactic affairs. Perhaps they finally understand their place. Dexner suggested. He was older now, his scales losing some of their vibrant color, but his arrogance remained unchanged. They are content to serve in their small capacity and leave the important matters to their betters. What the Council did not see was the network of human colonies spreading through space, each one carefully chosen to be far from major galactic trade routes. They did not see the research stations hidden in asteroid fields and around dead stars. They did not see the fleets being built in orbital shipyards that appeared on no galactic charts. The humans had learned the galaxy's most important lesson. Power meant nothing if everyone knew about it. True strength came from being underestimated. On Earth, the unified government met in chambers deep beneath the surface, protected by layers of rock and defensive systems that could withstand anything short of a planetary bombardment. President Haiyan Kang addressed his cabinet on the 80th anniversary of humanity's rejection by the Council. "We have reports from our intelligence services," he said. His voice was calm, but carried authority that made everyone listen. "The Galactic Council is showing cracks. Border disputes between the Vren and the Calthene have turned violent. Resource shortages are causing unrest in the outer territories. Several minor species are petitioning for representation and being denied. The same treatment we received," noted Defense Secretary Yuna Song. She was younger than most of the cabinet, barely 50, but her mind was sharp as a blade. "Should we offer support to these species?" "No," Haiyan said. "We remain silent. We observe. We learn. But we do not involve ourselves in council politics. That is their game, and we do not play it. What if they ask for our help?" Someone asked. "They will not ask," Haiyan replied. "To ask us would be to admit they need something from a species they declared inferior. Their pride will not allow it." He was right. Months passed, then years, and the Council never reached out to humanity. Meanwhile, human ships using silent drives mapped every corner of explored space and pushed into regions no Council species had ever visited. Human scientists studied alien technology from a distance, not to copy it, but to understand its principles and then surpass it. Captain Sejun Nam commanded one of these exploration vessels. He was 40 years old, born after humanity's rejection, and he had grown up in a culture that did not seek approval from aliens. His ship, the Pathfinder, was invisible to scanners when its silent drive was active. It could jump between stars without leaving the energy trail that Council ships created. "Captain," his science officer called one day, "we are detecting unusual energy signatures from a system 20 light years from here. The patterns do not match any known technology." Seo-jun studied the readings. His instincts, honed by years of silent exploration, told him something was wrong. "Change course. We investigate, but we do so carefully. Full stealth protocols." The Pathfinder moved through space like a ghost. When they reached the system, they found something that made Seo-jun's blood run cold. A colony world, one that belonged to a minor Council species, was under attack. Ships of a design he had never seen were systematically destroying orbital platforms and bombarding the surface. Should we help them? His tactical officer asked. Seo-jun watched the destruction for a long moment. Every instinct told him to intervene, to use Pathfinder's superior weapons to drive off the attackers. But he thought of Director Kim's words, repeated in training to every ship captain. "We are observers. We watch. We learn. We survive. Record everything," Seo-jun ordered. "Every ship design, every weapon signature, every tactical pattern. Then we return to Earth at maximum speed. Command needs to see this." The Pathfinder jumped away, leaving the colony to its fate. Seo-jun hated himself for it, but he understood the necessity. Humanity had to know what was coming before they could decide how to respond. The data reached Earth 3 days later. Defense Secretary Yuna Song watched the recordings with growing concern. The attackers were efficient, ruthless, and technologically advanced. They called themselves the Void Reapers, according to scattered transmissions the Pathfinder had intercepted. "The Council does not know about this yet," Una said to her staff. "Should we warn them?" The room was quiet. Finally, someone spoke. "If we warn them, they will ask how we knew. They will discover our silent drive technology. They will learn that we have been exploring far beyond the borders they assigned us. And more importantly," added another officer, "they will expect us to help fight this threat. They will demand access to our technology, our ships, our resources. The same council that called us primitives will suddenly decide we are valuable." Una made her decision. "We say nothing. We prepare our own defenses. We continue to observe. And we let the Galactic Council face this threat with the resources and allies they have chosen to cultivate." "What if the Reapers win?" someone asked quietly. "Then we will have learned exactly how dangerous the galaxy really is," Una replied. "And we will be ready." Humanity stayed silent as the storm gathered on the horizon. The first Council world fell in less than 6 hours. The attack came without warning, without demands, without any communication at all. The Void Reapers simply appeared in orbit around Calthine Prime and began their work. Defensive platforms that had stood for 1,000 years were reduced to debris within minutes. Ships that scrambled to respond found their weapons useless against shields that seemed to absorb energy and grow stronger from it. When the bombardment ended, Calthine Prime was a dead world. 4 billion beings gone in less than a day. The Emergency Council session was chaos. High Chancellor Thexner tried to maintain order, but representatives shouted over each other in a dozen different languages. The Calthine delegate, one of the few survivors of their homeworld, flickered with colors that the translation system could not properly interpret, but that clearly meant grief and rage. "Who are they?" demanded the Morthine representative. "Where did they come from?" "Unknown," Exner replied. His scales had turned a gray color that his species showed only during times of great stress. "Our best scientists are analyzing the attack data. The Reapers use technology we do not understand. Their ships appear to function on principles that violate our understanding of physics. Then we must gather our fleets," insisted another council member. "We must strike back before they attack again." They did gather their fleets. The combined military might of 12 species assembled near the border of council space, the largest armada in galactic history. 7,000 ships carrying weapons capable of destroying planets. Shields that could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. Commanders who had trained for centuries in the art of war. The Void Reapers destroyed them in 4 days. The battle was not even close. Reaper ships moved with impossible speed and precision. Their weapons cut through council shields like they were not even there. Tactics that had won 1,000 battles proved useless against an enemy that seemed to predict every move before it happened. Of the 7,000 ships that had assembled, fewer than 300 escaped. High Chancellor Thexner watched the defeat from the council chambers, his scales now pure white with shock. In his long life, he had seen wars and disasters, but never anything like this. The Galactic Council, which had ruled this region of space for 10,000 years, was losing. "Send messages to all our colonies," he ordered. "Begin evacuation procedures. We must save who we can." The evacuations were disasters. The Reapers seemed to know exactly which worlds to hit next, striking at the most populated colonies with devastating efficiency. They did not occupy worlds or take prisoners. They simply destroyed everything and moved on. Within 6 months, 17 council colonies had been wiped out. Billions were dead. Billions more were fleeing in whatever ships they could find. The council met again, but now the chambers were half empty. Several species had withdrawn completely, choosing to defend their own territory rather than fight for a council that could not protect them. The representatives who remained were desperate. "We need allies," said the Calthine delegate. Her crystalline form had cracks in it now, damage from the stress and grief. "There must be other species in the galaxy who will help us." "We have contacted everyone within reach," Exner replied. "Most refuse to get involved. They see the Reapers as our problem." "What about the humans?" Someone suggested. The chamber fell silent. Every representative there remembered humanity's application for membership a century ago. They remembered the mockery, the dismissal, the assignment to waste management. Several of them had been personally involved in that decision. "The humans are primitives," Vexner said, but his voice lacked conviction. "What could they possibly offer?" "They have been silent for 100 years, the Morthine representative pointed out. "No requests for aid, no participation in trade, no diplomatic contact beyond the minimum required. Does that not strike anyone as strange?" "Perhaps they are simply content with their role," suggested another council member. "Or perhaps they lack the capability for anything more." But doubt had been planted. The council authorized a message to Earth, a simple inquiry about whether humanity had any resources they could contribute to the defense effort. The message was formal and cold, offering nothing and asking for everything. Ambassador Mingji Shin received the message at Earth's orbital station. She read it 3 times, her expression never changing. Then she recorded a response that was exactly 23 words long. "Earth acknowledges the Council's message. Humanity is fulfilling its assigned duties and has no additional resources to allocate at this time." A message reached the Council 2 days later. Dexner stared at it in disbelief. "That is all? No offer of help? No expression of concern? It appears humans are as useless as we always knew," said another representative bitterly. What the Council did not know was that human ships were everywhere. Captain Si-Jun Nam and dozens of other commanders were shadowing the Reaper fleet, studying their tactics, analyzing their technology, searching for weaknesses. The silent drive made their ships invisible to both the Reapers and the Council forces. They watched battles from a distance, recording everything. Co Jun stood on the bridge of his ship, watching as another Council fleet engaged the Reapers. This one was smaller, only 500 ships, and they were trying a new tactic based on concentrated fire. It did not work. The Reapers adapted within minutes, and the slaughter continued. "Captain, should we not help them?" his tactical officer asked. The young woman's voice was tight with suppressed emotion. "We have weapons that could make a difference." "Our orders are to observe only," Sia-John replied. He hated those orders, hated watching beings die when he could prevent it, but he understood the reasoning. Earth needs to understand the full scope of the threat before committing forces. How many must die before we understand enough? She asked. Sio-Jun had no answer for that. On Earth, Defense Secretary Unisong received reports from all the observation ships. She compiled the data with her staff, building a complete picture of the Void Reapers and their capabilities. What she saw frightened her in ways she did not want to admit. "They are not just advanced," she told President Haiyan Kang in a private meeting. "They are systematic. They target population centers first, then industrial facilities, then agricultural worlds. They are not trying to conquer. They are trying to eliminate. Can we defeat them?" Haiyan asked. "Unknown," Yuna replied honestly. "Our weapons are superior to Council technology, but the Reapers are still ahead of us in several key areas. A direct confrontation would be costly. We might win, but we would lose millions in the process. And if we do nothing, then the Galactic Council falls. Every species that scorned us will be destroyed or scattered. The Reapers will control this entire region of space." Haiyan was quiet for a long time. "Do we have any obligation to help them?" The council made their judgment of us clear. They treated us as inferiors. They gave us the task of managing their waste. Why should we risk our people for theirs? Because we are not them, Yuna said simply. We did not spend a century advancing our civilization just to become as callous as they are. If we let billions die when we can stop it, we become something worse than the council ever was. The president nodded slowly. You are right. But we do this on our terms, not theirs. Prepare the fleets, but quietly. Continue observations. And wait for the council to truly understand what they are facing. The Reapers continued their advance. 3 more worlds fell. The council sent more desperate messages to Earth, these ones offering trade agreements and technology exchanges. Minji Shin's responses grew shorter each time. No, declined. Humanity remains focused on assigned duties. High Chancellor Vexner finally broke. He sent a personal message directly to Earth's government, bypassing normal diplomatic channels. His scales were gray and white, colors of shame and desperation. I was wrong, he said in the recording. The council was wrong. We judged your species by standards that do not matter. We mocked achievements we should have respected. If you have any capability to help us, any resources at all, we beg you to reconsider. Billions of lives hang in the balance. The message reached President Haiyan Kang's desk. He watched it alone in his office, seeing the proud alien leader reduced to begging. Part of him felt satisfaction at the reversal. Part of him felt only sadness at how much had been lost. He recorded his own response. High Chancellor, humanity received your message. We note your changed position. However, Earth's policy remains unchanged. We are observers. We manage waste reclamation. We do not involve ourselves in council affairs. These were the roles you assigned to us. We are simply fulfilling them. When Vexner received that message, he understood at last what humanity had become during their century of silence. Not weak, not primitive, but utterly, completely done with the Galactic Council's judgment. The Reapers were now within striking distance of the Council's core worlds. If something did not change soon, the government that had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years would cease to exist. And humanity was still watching, still silent, still waiting. The delegation arrived at Earth's borders 3 weeks after. High Chancellor Vexner's personal message was rejected. This time, they came in person rather than sending recordings. A small diplomatic ship requested permission to approach Earth's orbital platforms, and for the first time in a century, Council representatives would set foot on human territory. Leading the delegation was Vexner III, grandson of the High Chancellor who had mocked humanity 100 years ago. He was young for his species, barely 60 years old, but the war had aged him. His scales were a muted blue-gray, and his movements lacked the arrogance that had characterized his grandfather. Permission to dock granted, came the response from Earth's orbital control. The voice was neutral, professional, and completely devoid of warmth. You will be met by Admiral Ji Woo Han. Please proceed to Docking Bay 12. The delegation included representatives from 5 different council species. They had argued for weeks about who should come and what they should say. In the end, they decided that honesty was their only option. They would admit the council's mistakes, offer full membership to humanity, and beg for help. What they did not expect was the cold, sterile meeting room where Admiral Han received them. The room was small, barely large enough for all of them. White walls, a simple metal table, uncomfortable chairs. No decorations, no displays of culture or achievement, nothing to make them feel welcome. It was the kind of room used for interrogations, not diplomatic meetings. Admiral Ji Woo Han entered precisely on time. She was 53 years old, her black hair streaked with gray, her uniform immaculate. She did not smile. She did not offer refreshments. She simply sat down and said, "You have 1 hour. Begin." Vexner III shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had prepared a speech, carefully crafted words about mutual benefit and shared interests. All of it died in his throat when he met the Admiral's cold stare. "The Galactic Council wishes to formally apologize for its treatment of humanity a century ago," he began. His voice translator rendered his words in perfect English. "We recognize that our judgment was flawed. We allowed prejudice and pride to cloud our assessment of your species' value." "Value," Admiral Han repeated. Her tone made the word sound obscene. "You are apologizing because you now see value in us. Not because what you did was wrong, but because circumstances have changed." "That is not what I meant," Vexner protested. "We understand that our behavior was inappropriate regardless of circumstances. Do you?" Han stood and walked to the wall. She touched a panel, and a holographic display filled the room. It showed the council chamber from a century ago. Every delegate could see High Chancellor Vexner I, the current delegate's grandfather. Laughing at Commander Taiyang Park, they could hear the mockery, the dismissal, the casual cruelty. "We bring a fresh perspective," Taiyang's voice said from the recording. "A willingness to learn, and the determination that has allowed us to survive and thrive despite the challenges we have faced." "Determination," the old Vexner's voice replied. "Every species has determination, Commander. What you call determination, we call the baseline requirement for survival. It is not special. It is not enough." The recording continued, showing every humiliating moment of humanity's rejection. The Calthene delegate in the room flickered with discomfort. The Morphine representative looked away. Vexner III felt his scales darken with shame. "We have kept this recording," Admiral Han said when it finished. "Every human child learns about this day in their history classes. Not to foster hatred, but to remember a lesson. The galaxy judges worth by narrow standards: power, age, conventional achievement. It does not value determination, creativity, or potential." She sat back down. "So humanity stopped seeking the galaxy's approval. We stopped caring what you thought of us. And we built our civilization according to our own values, not yours." "We understand," Vexner said quietly. "And we are sorry. But apologies do not change our current situation. The Void Reapers will destroy the Council within months. After that, they will likely turn their attention to other species, including humanity." "Possibly," Han agreed. "We have been monitoring the situation." "Monitoring?" The Morphine representative spoke for the first time, her forearms gesturing in agitation. "You have been watching us die and doing nothing?" "Yes," Han said simply. "Just as you watched us struggle for recognition and did nothing. Just as you assigned us to manage your waste and expected gratitude. We are observing, exactly as observers should." "But you could help," Vexner insisted. "You must have some capability. Even if your technology has not advanced much, every ship matters now. We are offering full council membership immediately. Full voting rights. Access to all council resources and technology. We will even share the most classified military secrets. Just please help us." Admiral Han looked at each delegate in turn. Her expression never changed. "No," the word fell like a hammer. The delegates stared at her in shock. "No?" Vexner repeated. "You would let billions die? You would let the council fall? What kind of monsters have you become?" "The kind that learned from you," Han replied. Her voice was still calm, but something cold lurked beneath it. "You taught us that the galaxy respects only power and dismisses everything else. You taught us that mercy is weakness and compassion is naivety. We learned our lessons well. High Chancellor." She stood to leave. This meeting is concluded. You will be escorted back to your ship. Wait, said a new voice. A younger member of the delegation, a human named Yunji Ro, stepped forward. She was part of Earth's diplomatic corps, included in the meeting as an observer. Admiral, may I speak? Han paused. You have 2 minutes, Ambassador Ro. Yunji turned to face the council delegates. I was born after the rejection. I grew up in a humanity that had learned to stand alone. My teachers showed me the recording you just saw and told me it was history, that we had moved past it. But watching your faces now, I realize we have not moved past it. We have just stopped talking about it. She took a breath. The council treated us badly. That is true. But becoming like the council, letting our hurt turn into their cruelty, that is not who we are supposed to be. My grandmother served on the ship that brought Commander Taiyang home from that meeting. She told me he cried that night in private because he had hoped so much that the galaxy would be better than it was. He did not want revenge. He wanted to prove that humans could rise above the pettiness and build something better. Yunji looked at Admiral Han. With respect, Admiral, I believe we have built something better. We have the power to help. We have the capability to make a difference. The question is not whether we can, but whether we will choose to be better than those who rejected us. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Han's expression softened slightly. You speak well, Ambassador, but this is not my decision to make. She touched her communication device. This meeting has been monitored by President Hyun Kong. He will deliver Earth's official response. A holographic image appeared in the room, showing the president of Earth's unified government. He was 70 years old, his face lined with experience and wisdom. High Chancellor Vexner III, the president said, I have listened to this entire conversation. I have heard your apology and your request, and I have made my decision. The delegates leaned forward, hope and fear mixing in their expressions. Humanity will act, Hyun said. Not because you asked. Not because you offered us membership. Not because we seek anything from you at all. We will act because innocent beings are dying, and we have the power to stop it. That is what separates us from you. That is what we learned during our century of silence. He paused, and his next words carried absolute certainty. But understand this, we do not fight for the Galactic Council. We do not fight to preserve your power or your pride. We fight because it is right. And when this war is over, things will change. The Council will reform. Every species will have representation. There will be no more observers, no more second-class members. Or humanity will stand apart, and you will face the future without us. We agree to all terms, Vexner said immediately. Whatever you demand, we accept. Good, President Hyun replied. Then return to your people and tell them this. Humanity remembers. We remember every slight, every mockery, every dismissal. But we also remember who we chose to be despite those things. We remained silent when you expected rage. We built strength when you expected submission. And now we will show you what a truly advanced civilization looks like. The hologram faded. Admiral Han gestured to the door. Your escort is waiting. As the delegates filed out, Vexner III paused at the doorway. Admiral Han, may I ask one question? Ask. How long have you been ready to help? How long have you had the capability to fight the Reapers? Admiral Han smiled for the first time, and it was not a pleasant expression. From the beginning, High Chancellor. We have been ready from the very beginning. We were just waiting for you to understand what you had thrown away 100 years ago. The door closed behind them, leaving the Admiral alone in the sterile room. She allowed herself one long breath, releasing tension she had held throughout the meeting. Then she activated her communication system. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Han. Operation Redemption is approved. Begin deployment immediately. Across human space, ships that had waited in silence for years began to move. The terminus front was where the Galactic Council had drawn its last line of defense. 600 ships, all that remained of their once mighty fleets, formed a desperate barrier between the Void Reapers and the Council's core worlds. High Chancellor Vixner I, now ancient and frail, watched from a command ship as the enemy approached. His scales were almost white, the color of his species in their final days. "They will break through within hours," his tactical officer reported. "Our weapons barely scratch their shields. We cannot hold." Vexner nodded slowly. He had lived to see his civilization fall, brought down by an enemy they could not understand and could not defeat. It seemed a fitting end for a leader who had grown so arrogant in his species' power. "Continue fighting," he ordered. "If these are our final hours, we face them with dignity." The Reapers advanced in their usual formation, perfect and inevitable. Their black ships seemed to absorb light itself, moving through space like holes in reality. The Council fleet opened fire, and as expected, their weapons did almost nothing. Shields flickered but held. The Reapers did not even bother returning fire yet, simply moving closer with patient certainty. Then something changed. "Sir," the sensor officer said, confusion in her voice. "I am detecting new contacts. Multiple signatures appearing across the battlefield. Reinforcements?" Dexner asked without hope. Every Council species that could send ships already had. "Unknown origin," the officer replied. "They are just appearing. No FTL signatures, no engine trails. They are simply there." On the tactical display, dozens of new contacts materialized. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Ships of a design Vexner did not recognize, sleek and deadly, positioned perfectly between the Council fleet and the Reapers. They had appeared without warning, without the energy signature that every FTL drive produced. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced. "It is on all channels, broadcasting to every ship in the system." A human face appeared on the screen. Admiral Taiyang Park, son of the commander who had stood before the Council a century ago. He was 45 years old, and his expression carried the same quiet confidence his father had shown. "To all Galactic Council forces, this is Admiral Park of the Human Expeditionary Force. Stand down and move to defensive positions. We will handle the Reapers from here." Dexner stared at the screen in disbelief. The humans? But they said they would not help. They refused every request. "Sir, the human fleet is moving to engage," the tactical officer reported, counting over 3,000 ships. "Their weapons are powering up." The Reapers, for the first time in the entire war, hesitated. Their perfect formation broke slightly as they analyzed the new arrivals. Then they resumed their advance, apparently, deciding that numbers alone would not change the outcome. They were catastrophically wrong. The human ships opened fire, and the Reaper's shields collapsed. Weapons that worked on principles the Council had never imagined tore through defenses that had withstood everything the galaxy could throw at them. Gravitational lances crushed ships from the inside out. Quantum disruptors unraveled the fundamental forces holding matter together. Missiles that created localized singularities turned Reaper vessels into compressed spheres of twisted metal. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, the Reaper fleet at the terminus front had been completely destroyed. Not a single human ship had been damaged. The Council fleet hung in space, their crews too shocked to speak. High Chancellor. Vexner watched the tactical display, where human ships were now systematically hunting down the few Reaper vessels attempting to flee. None escaped. "Open a channel to the human flagship," he ordered. When Admiral Park's face appeared again, Vexner could only ask, "How?" "A century of focused development," Park replied. While you rested on your achievements, we worked. While you maintained your power structures, we revolutionized ours. While you dismissed us, we surpassed you. But your technology was primitive. Your drives were slow, your weapons crude. They were, Park agreed. 100 years ago, everything you said about us was true. But that was 100 years ago, High Chancellor. We learned, we adapted, and we never stopped improving. Other reports were flooding in from across the war zone. Human ships had appeared at every major battle site simultaneously, using their impossible stealth drives. Captain Sora Yoon and her stealth frigate squadron had infiltrated the Reaper's command networks, uploading viruses designed by Dr. Hana Kim decades ago specifically for this purpose. The viruses had laid dormant, gathering information until the moment humanity decided to act. Now they were tearing through Reaper systems, causing cascading failures across their entire fleet. Captain Seo Jun Nam led a strike force to the Reaper's forward base, a massive station hidden in a nebula. His ships destroyed it in a single, overwhelming assault that left no survivors and no intact technology for the Reapers to recover. Across the galaxy, humanity's military power was revealed in all its terrible glory. Ships that could not be detected until they chose to reveal themselves. Weapons that made the Council's most advanced technology look like primitive tools. Coordination and tactics that spoke of decades of practice and preparation. Within 3 weeks, the Void Reapers were no longer an existential threat. They were survivors fleeing into the unknown regions of space, hunted by human ships that could follow them anywhere. The war that had seemed unwinnable was over, and humanity had won it almost effortlessly. High Chancellor Vex Nur requested a meeting with Earth's leadership. This time, he came to Earth itself, landing on a planet he had never visited despite a century of humanity being part of the galactic community. The unified government received him in a grand hall that had been built specifically for this moment, with walls showing images of human achievement throughout the silent century. President Haiyan Kong stood to receive him. Beside the president stood Admiral Ji Woo-han, Admiral Taiyang Park, Ambassador Yoon-ji Ro, and a dozen other human leaders. And in a wheelchair at the front, now 98 years old, but still sharp-eyed, sat Dr. Hana Kim, High Chancellor, Haiyan said. His tone was respectful but firm. Welcome to Earth. Dexner looked around the hall, seeing images of the quantum networks, the terraformed worlds, the silent drive ships, the medical miracles, the weapons that had saved the galaxy. Every achievement had been accomplished during humanity's century of silence, while the Council remained ignorant. We were fools, Dexner said simply. His scales were a blue color, his species showed during moments of profound humility. A century. Go, my grandfather stood in the council chambers and mocked your species. He called you primitive. He assigned you to manage waste. He dismissed everything you had achieved as worthless. Yes, Haiyan agreed. He did. I come before you now to acknowledge that every judgment the council made was wrong. Not just flawed or mistaken, but completely, fundamentally wrong. We measured you by standards that did not matter and ignored the things that did. You told us you brought determination, fresh perspectives, and a willingness to learn. We laughed. But those were exactly the qualities that allowed you to surpass us. Vexner took a breath. You saved us. Not because we deserved it, but because you chose to be better than we were. You have earned the right to demand anything from the Council. Name your terms, and they will be met. President Haiyan Kong was quiet for a moment, looking at the alien leader who had traveled so far to deliver this apology. Then he spoke, and his words would reshape the galaxy. The Galactic Council will reform, immediately and completely. Every species, regardless of age or power, will have full representation. There will be no observer status, No second-class members, no species assigned to serve others. Decisions will be made democratically, with every voice carrying equal weight. Agreed, Vexner said without hesitation. The Council will establish a charter of rights that applies to all species equally. No more wars of conquest. No more exploitation of weaker civilizations. No more judging worth by military might or technological age. Agreed. And the Council will acknowledge, publicly and permanently, that a century ago it made a grave error, not just toward humanity, but in its entire philosophy. You will tell every species in the galaxy what happened here, how you dismissed us, how we thrived anyway, and how your pride nearly caused your destruction. Dexner's scales flickered with discomfort, but he nodded. It will be done. All of it? Is there anything else? Hyan smiled slightly. Yes, one more thing. Humanity will take a seat on the Council. Not because you offered it to us, but because we have proven we deserve it. And we will use that position to ensure this kind of mistake never happens again. Thank you, Vexner said quietly. And I am sorry. I know those words do not erase the past, but they are sincere. We know, said a new voice. Dr. Hana Kim had raised her hand, and the room fell silent. She spoke with the authority of someone who had lived through it all, from the humiliation to the triumph. High Chancellor, do you know why humanity stayed silent for a century? To develop your technology in secret? Vexner guessed. No, Hannah said. We stayed silent because we learned that the galaxy was not ready to hear us. You judged us by what we were, not what we could become. So we stopped trying to convince you. We simply became what we knew we could be. And we waited for you to understand. She looked at the images on the walls around them. A century ago, your grandfather asked what value humanity could bring to the Council. The answer was always there. We brought hope. We brought the belief that any species, no matter how young or seemingly primitive, can achieve greatness if given the chance. We brought proof that strength comes not from age or power, but from determination and the willingness to grow. And what you called waste management, added Admiral Taiyang Park. Speaking for the first time, we turned into an opportunity to serve. We could have raged against the insult. Instead, we did the work better than anyone expected, and we learned from it. Every challenge you meant as humiliation, we transformed into growth. High Chancellor Vexner lowered his head, his scales showing colors of respect and remorse. The galaxy has much to learn from humanity. I hope you will be patient teachers. We will be fair teachers, President Hyan replied, just as we hope the galaxy will be fair students. The meeting ended with formal agreements and diplomatic protocols, but the real conclusion had already occurred. The galaxy had learned what happened when you dismissed potential in favor of immediate power, when you judged worth by narrow standards instead of broad vision, when you let pride blind you to value. Humanity had stayed silent, and in that silence, they had become something the Galactic Council never expected. Not conquerors or saviors, but equals who had earned their place through quiet determination rather than loud demands. 3 months later, the reformed Galactic Council met for the first time. Representatives from 40 species attended, including dozens who had previously been denied seats. The chamber had been redesigned so that no seat was elevated above another. Every species spoke with equal voice. Admiral Taiyang Park represented humanity. He stood in the center of the chamber, in the same spot where his father had stood a century before. This time, no one laughed. No one interrupted. They listened as he spoke about humanity's vision for a galaxy built on cooperation rather than hierarchy, on potential rather than power, on fairness rather than tradition. When he finished, the chamber erupted in approval, not because humans had saved them, though they had, not because humans had shown superior power, though they had, But because humanity had proven that a better way was possible, that night, Taiyang visited his father's grave. Commander Taiyang Park had died 15 years earlier. Having lived long enough to see humanity's technology surpass the Council's, but not quite long enough to see this moment of triumph. "We did it, Father," the Admiral said quietly. "We stayed silent, just like you said. We built ourselves into something worthy. And when the time came, we proved that you were right all along. Determination was enough. It was always enough." Above Earth, human ships patrolled the skies alongside vessels from a dozen other species. The silent drive remained a closely guarded secret, but enough had been shared to make cooperation possible. In laboratories across human space, scientists worked on projects that would benefit the entire galaxy. Not just humanity, and in schools throughout Earth and its colonies. Young humans learned about the day their species was rejected, the century of silence that followed, and the moment when they proved that being dismissed by others does not define your worth. You define it yourself.